It's a sweet treat many Mainers look forward to picking every year, strawberries. But as Alyssa Thurlow reports, some farms are struggling with this year's crop due to a spring frost.
Maine strawberry season is here, but just like any other crop, strawberries are weather dependent.
This year's strawberry crop is similar to a lot of crops right now, a bit delayed because of the cool temperatures that we've been having, and also not quite as much sunshine as we would normally expect.
Mother Nature wreaked havoc on some strawberry crops that crossed the state in late May. An unexpected frost damaged many flowering crops.
One cold night at the wrong time can really do a number. In a lot of areas, we were down below 28 degrees, and it came just at the time as blossoms were developing. And so even though that temperature is not cool enough to kill the plant, it is cold enough to kill the blossoms.
Mark Hutton is a vegetable specialist for the University of Maine Cooperative Extension. He says there is some injury to this year's crop, but not enough to be substantial.
There certainly are going to be some growers who either didn't have frost protection or didn't have enough frost protection, and so some of their yields may be impacted.
Jonathan Kennerson of Torgy Family Orchards in Levant was one of the lucky ones, as they had the irrigation in place to protect their strawberries. Even so, their season has been delayed slightly.
We were hoping to be picking a week earlier, and it would have been a week earlier, but those cold, wet temperatures just delayed the ripening. But if you get warm, sunny days, they just ripen real quickly. And with weather like this, we're going to see good crops coming in full.
Despite the challenges, farmers are getting ready to open their stands and their fields for you-pick in the coming days.
There's a lot of good berries out there, and the varieties that are coming on are ones that I really like. So I'm looking forward to it.
There's nothing like a fresh strawberry, and this is when it's all worth it.
Alyssa Thurlow, WABI TV 5 News.